Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today on our ProdPad success session on managing feedback. Let's start with what are success sessions. We're going to focus on a different area each month. We'll discuss setting up, implementation, and best practices. And of course, it's really just an informal session. So if you guys ever want to talk or have any questions, please go ahead and do so. You can use the raise your hand if you want to talk directly into your microphone to the rest of us, or you can just write it in the chat. By the way, this session is recorded, so we will be sending it out if you want to share it later. I am Andrea, and I'm the Customer Experience Manager here at ProdPad. I am a previous product manager. I was actually the first ProdPad employee, and I, of course, manage experiences for our customers, including the ProdPad community and our own feedback backlog, which I'll be talking about today.
And hi everyone, I am Emma, the account manager at ProdPad. I might have spoken to some of you before. I actually also used to be a product manager at a learn tech company where I implemented ProdPad as part of implementing product processes at my old organisation. I also am a co-organiser and founder of Product Tank Oxford, which is just a local meetup community. So basically, I just like talking about product with product people all the time. But before that, I actually was a project manager working on higher education projects. So in this session, we're mostly going to be talking about managing feedback. This is one of our most popular topics, I think, when we have chats with customers, is thinking about how do we manage feedback and what's the process around it. So we're going to focus on 3 key areas for this session. The first is like why it's so important to collect feedback in the first place. Second, we'll look at how to gather feedback effectively, and then we'll look at what to do with it once you have it. So from the result of taking part in this webinar, you'll be able to go away and think about how you're going to build a manageable process for managing feedback in your organization that scales as you grow. So as people in product organizations, we know that listening to the customer and feedback is really important, but it's also quite scary. So there's a couple of common questions around whether you should be gathering feedback and why you should go for it. First is like, will it open up the floodgates? Are you just going to be subsumed with lots of information and feedback from all of your customers, and it's just going to be unmanageable alongside all your other day-to-day activities, like managing your ideas backlog and managing the roadmap? Or if you're not in the product team, you know, is it going to just be another thing that you're going to have to manage, sending feedback to the product team for them to review? Another one is around the exec not being very keen on the idea of gathering feedback from customers, and maybe they feel that they know better. You know, they're disrupting an industry. If you ask customers what they want, they don't know. So you don't really need to listen to them. And then also, it might be that you have quite a lot of noisy customers or certain customers that are more vocal, and you don't want them to derail your product. You don't want them to have priority over others. You want everyone to get a fair say. But I think there's no ifs and buts about it. We all know that's why you're on the webinar today, that actually feedback is really important and it's really powerful evidence. We all need to listen to customers in our product organizations, and to do that, they need a constructive funnel to share their feedback with you. So enabling them to easily share feedback in a way that's going to be easy for you to then manage it. And by having this process, you're going to be able to focus on their pain points and problems rather than just managing requests. And it won't be about who just shouts the loudest. You'll have a fair feedback process that everyone can feed into, and you can then review it, or your product team can then review that and balance it out against other priorities such as your business objectives and so on. So it'll help you to reduce the assumptions that you make. You'll have more evidence to make better informed decisions, which can only lead to better outcomes. So the first question we'll do via chat. So you've all booked onto this webinar today, so you must have an interest and a reason as to why you currently collect feedback or why you want to start collecting feedback. So have a go in chat and let us know your reasons why you want to be collecting feedback and why it's important to your organizations. We'll just leave a couple of minutes for this, I think.
I may have accidentally launched the wrong poll, for which I do apologize.
That's okay.
They're not in order. I launched the one about where do we currently gather feedback from.
Yeah.
But it's okay, people are answering it.
You can answer that poll too. That question will come up in a bit. But if you want to share maybe your reasons in the chat as well as to why you're interested in collecting feedback and why you feel it's important to your organization, that'd be great. I can see lots are coming in now, so that's good. Amazing. So I can see we've got quite a few different answers here in chat around your reasons for wanting to collect feedback. I mean, one common theme is obviously that, you know, it is evidence that will help you to make product decisions. So that is obviously very important. But obviously, from what we can see from some of the comments in the chat, it kind of depends on the sort of situation for your organization. So someone has said about their product being brand new and need to iterate quickly. So in order to iterate quickly, you want to get quick feedback, which is good. And then also having more of a traditional organization where knowledge is a bit more siloed, which is another good point. By having an open feedback process, you'll be able to share that feedback across your organization. So more shared knowledge, better informed decisions, which can only be a good thing. Andrew, are there any others that sort of stand out for you? I know you manage a lot of our feedback.
That's an interesting question. I think definitely understanding where people are confused and how we can help clarify certain things, which is something that has been brought up in the chat as well.
Yeah, that's really important too. Yeah.
Helps us, you know, find where we can improve, whether it's through services or support or through the app itself.
Absolutely. So yeah, so I think that's really the common theme from what you're all saying is regardless of the sort of situation of the product, like the maturity of the product, by gathering feedback is going to help you make that informed decision moving forward as to where you can make improvements in your product, whether it be just around the product itself or the services around it. So I think feedback is really important across the business. It's not just about product teams. This is where everyone can be involved, whether it's sales, success, whoever can be important to that process. So thanks for sharing that, everybody. So thinking about that then, and where feedback comes from. So it does come from all over the business. So it can come from the support desk. So customers submitting support tickets, sometimes they think it's a bug, but actually it just doesn't exist yet. So that's all feedback, or maybe it's highlighting different pain points that can come in then as feedback. Also through sales calls, sales team having conversations with potential customers. What are things that they would like the tool to be able to do or the product to be able to do? What do they have questions and feedback around problems or pain points, you know, the reason why they've decided to even investigate your product in the first place? That can all come in as feedback too. Equally, other internal stakeholders, either as they are using the product or they are in maybe the design team and they're building out designs for things, they also will probably have some useful constructive feedback as to how improvements can be made too. And then also customer success. So similar to support, customer success have like a lot of touch points with customers, and they'll be having a lot of information on all sorts of different feedback from the customers, whether it be problems, pain points, improvements, requests, everything. So feedback really can come in from all over the place across your organization. So ProdPad enables you to gather this in a constructive way. I'm just going to pause here and show you the customer feedback portal that we do have that you can use if you aren't already. So depending on what plan you're on, you are able to embed the portal on a web page. So this is our example. So we have our customer feedback portal embedded on our website. You can edit the text, so depending on what you're trying to encourage feedback and how you want to use the sort of terminology around feedback suggestions or feature requests or whatever that is, then you can tailor it to what you want to have for your customers. The key things are that you take their name and email, as these are the fields that we have in ProdPad, and then they've got the box to share what their feedback is. And we also have the ability for you to highlight existing ideas that are in your backlog. So if there are specific ideas, maybe they're in the later column on your roadmap or they're not on your roadmap yet, you're sort of debating whether to put them on, you can put these ideas on your customer feedback portal and your customers can say, yes, I would like to have the templates for docs. This is our own customer feedback portal, so if you want to vote on things later, please do. And then once they say they want it, again, they're faced with that feedback form so they can share more feedback as to why they would like that idea. And we've done a couple of things with this to try and remove bias. So when you land on this page, it refreshes and reorders these ideas, trying to remove that element of bias that you can get from some of the voting systems that are alternatives out there, which often you can see that people tend to just vote on the popular ones or the ones at the top, and the ideas at the bottom don't get any love. So we tried to balance out that bias for you by reordering them every time it refreshes. So this is one option for you as a way of gathering feedback into ProdPad. Other options, which I won't delve into more information here, but if you do want to have a look about more information, it's on our help center or you can reach out to us. But we have direct integrations with User Voice and Doorbell. And because we integrate with Zapier, it enables you to integrate then with other tools you might be using that get feedback. So Zendesk, which we'll talk to you later, that's what we have integrated with here at ProdPad using Zapier. Salesforce, you can do also Google Sheets and Typeform. So if you wanted to create different types of feedback forms, then you can use those alternatives as well. You can also import via CSV. So if you have done some user research or user testing and you want to just bulk import a sheet, then you can do that. And equally, if you just have another tool entirely that Zapier doesn't even have an integration with, then we do have really good APIs, so you will be able to get your feedback into ProdPad in some way. But if you have any questions on that, you're not sure, then do reach out and let us know. So next question, and this is the poll now. So where do you currently gather feedback from in your organization? And hopefully the poll will appear for you to vote if you haven't already.
I accidentally launched it earlier. So what I can tell you is that 83% of people gather feedback directly from support tickets.
Okay.
63% of people either from customer calls, directly from sales calls or their CRM. And we have 23% that selected other. And I do see responses such as using the ProdPad feedback portal, which is amazing. Cool. So well done.
Cool. Okay. So that's interesting. So most of them actually were from support tickets. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Ah, cool. So we're probably all in that situation where customers sometimes think things are bugs, but actually it's feedback. So that's good that you're actually able to gather those feedback from the support tickets and translate that into something that you can track as improvements ongoing. So that's fantastic. So where does the feedback go in ProdPad? So I'm just going to jump to ProdPad now. So regardless of where the feedback comes from, so we've explored different places that it might be coming from, whether it is, you know, support desk or your sales team or customer calls. But regardless, it all comes into ProdPad and into unsorted. So very similar to how you might be using the ideas backlog. Whoever is designated within your organization to manage that feedback, and it could be someone in your product team, it could be someone in customer success or support, or whoever it is that you have agreed is going to be reviewing it, they know that these 8 pieces of feedback haven't been reviewed yet. They need to be looked at. So the process then would be, you're reviewing this feedback on a regular basis, whether it be weekly, fortnightly, daily, whatever. You can take a look at it. If say, for example, this had come from a specific sales colleague. So Lizzie has added this, but it's not very detailed. I don't really know what the context of the conversation was. I can message Lizzie and ask her for a bit more detail, and also add extra details as well. So what product it relates to, any personas it might relate to, and any tags. So any sort of extra contextual information you want to be able to filter that feedback by later and be able to discover it. And then once you've reviewed it, you would move it to your backlog. And then there's two key things to be done here, which is relating them to ideas. So either you can highlight the text and create a new idea, or you can use the Add to Idea button and either add it to an existing idea in your backlog or create a new idea off the back of it. So what this means is that when you are reviewing your ideas as part of your product team are reviewing the ideas as part of prioritizing the work that's coming up, or what ideas you want to go onto the roadmap, then they can easily see then how many pieces of feedback there are, who's given that feedback. Because we have their name and email, you can then export those details and go back to them either for user research, beta testing, or just simply closing that feedback loop, which we'll talk about why that's so important later too. So that's how you would then manage that feedback within ProdPad. But just to clarify, sometimes there is a question over, well, what is the difference then between an idea versus feedback? And so feedback really is about problems and pain points that is coming in from your customers, or they could even be specific feature requests, like say a specific integration, for example. And you want to have multiple pieces of feedback. You want to have it's okay to have that same piece of feedback again. So say if you wanted a Salesforce integration, the fact that you have 10 versions of that feedback, that's a good thing, because it might be from 10 different people, or if it's 10 pieces of feedback from the same person, then you know they're really desperate. But what you're finding is building up that evidence means you're going to find commonality in the problems, which will then be able to relate up to those ideas and manage that. So ideas then, on the other side, are more about opportunities and solutions to those problems. They're more at that epic level, so they're more like a feature sort of level. And you only really want one of those. So you want to be gathering multiple pieces of feedback to attach to the idea, and then review that idea moving forward through your ideas workflow, which we won't get into today, but we'll probably do another success session about that. And a top tip if you weren't aware is we actually have predictive suggestions when you're adding feedback via the quick add. So if you were adding feedback in here, and say, well, I was talking to this customer and they want an FAQ document, then ProdPad actually will suggest ideas that might be related to the feedback that you're adding. So this makes it really simple for anyone within your organization to, when they're adding feedback, to actually easily connect it to existing ideas for you to then manage, or for the product team to then manage through the ideas workflow. So nice top tip if you haven't discovered that yet. So next question then, and there's a poll for this one. Do you relate ideas at the moment, feedback at the moment, to ideas in ProdPad? And we'll give just a minute for this.
That's an interesting set of results.
Oh, how many do we have?
So we have 61% for yes and 39% for no.
Cool. Okay, that's interesting. So, I mean, brilliant that 60% of you are already doing it. For those of you that aren't already doing it, and you are already using the ideas backlog, then it is worthwhile thinking about how you're going to link the feedback to ideas and maybe follow through on some of the things that we've shown you today, it will enable you to just build up more of an evidence base as to why you should be working on certain ideas. Obviously, it's not all just about customer requests. There are other things at play, but it will help make you a better informed decision when you are doing your prioritization work. So worthwhile having a play around. And again, if it's not something you've done already and you do want to follow up with us, then do let us know. So I'm now going to hand over to Andrea, as she actually is heavily involved in our feedback process at ProdPad. So she's better placed to sort of explain a little bit more about the importance of that and how we do things here at ProdPad.
Cool, thank you. So the first thing to keep in mind is why feedback is important. Feedback is going to give you another level of prioritization and another level of insight when it comes to understanding your idea backlog. So as you're plugging in that feedback into ProdPad and then looking at your backlog, you'll be able to sort your backlog. And I don't know, Emma, if you can pop that up really quickly, but you can go to the ideas list. We're going to pop up the ideas list right now. Go to the ideas list, look up feedback, and then sort by most to least. So what you hit, there you go. So right there, that right away gives you that visibility of what are the most requested ideas in your backlog, and then you can dig through that and get the qualitative, not just the quantitative. So if we click on FAQ documentation, for example, we'll be able to go to that feedback backlog, and then you can do all sorts of really neat stuff like filter it by the company value, which Emma's going to do right now. So that right there will show you, for example, all of the feedback that you've received from your highest valued companies or your lowest valued companies. You can even filter this out by job role or persona if you're looking at a particular persona type. So there's quite a bit of segmentation that you can do in order to run those user tests and that beta testing and all of that stuff that's really important to really dig down to what problem it is that you're trying to solve. That of course goes back to building up evidence. It helps you with prioritization, and it's going to help you make better informed decisions at the end of the day. So it's not just about the ideas, it's also about balancing that out with the feedback as well. A couple of things that you may want to consider as you're building a manageable process is, of course, where you're gathering the feedback from. And my advice always is do not limit yourself in any way. You shouldn't just say, or worry about gathering feedback in one particular way. So what we do here is, of course, we have social open, we have our portal, we have support, we have intercom, we have emails, we have calls. So don't try to funnel people into a single place, because that's just going to result in your users not wanting to give you feedback in the first place. The second important point here is who will review and sort of manage the entire process. Now, of course, as product managers, you guys have enough to do. I mean, managing a roadmap, managing stakeholders, managing ideas, that's a lot of stuff that you have going on. So what I would recommend is actually nominate someone in your support team or success team that will help you manage that. Someone that's going to go in there, that's going to review everything, tag everything, link it to ideas, and have that person or those people, if you have a team that does that, be able to then champion for your customers and be able to say, hey, by the way, I've noticed that this particular idea is getting a lot of feedback and things like that. And then they will also be able to help you communicate and close that feedback loop with your customers to kind of help you manage the amount of work that's involved. In terms of closing the feedback loop, a lot of people are definitely very interested. Excuse me, you guys, I've been sick for the last week and a half, so I keep coughing. But in terms of closing that feedback loop, what's important to consider is it doesn't really matter if you're following up 2 weeks later or 2 years later. What you want to do is keep that communication open with the customer. So of course, I'm the one that gets back to customers here, and I've reached back to customers sometimes even 2 years after something has been requested, particularly when I first started at ProdPad. And it gave me that opportunity to be able to engage the customer and bring them back on board, or at least get them interested to a point where, you know, they might want to restart their trial, you know, and kind of check out again what the app is about and how it can help them. And for those of you that have heard from me, you know, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months later, I always get an email back from you guys saying, it's so amazing that you're getting back to me, thank you. And I think that's what's going to give you guys that little bit of an extra edge when it comes to, you know, taking care of your customers. Is nobody expects someone to get back to them 2 years later saying, hey, that thing you requested, you know, 2-3 years ago, we've implemented it thanks to you and thanks to your feedback. And that's just going to make you look like a superhero at the end of the day. So digging down a little bit more as to how we do things around here. We do, of course, have a Zendesk integration. Now, those of you that are familiar with our intercom chats, what we do is we will send everything to to Zendesk regardless. Once it is there, it is tagged as feedback, and I did write a how-to on that. So how to send, how to collect and how to respond to people from Zendesk, you know, as feedback is logged in. So you guys can absolutely check that out. We'll be sure to send it out. I don't know, Emma, if you can grab it really quickly and copy paste it into the chat so you guys can read it. The second thing I do is, as things are coming in, I do a daily review of all the feedback that comes in. It used to be once a week when we were smaller. Now I absolutely have to do it every day, or it just piles up and piles up and piles up. So feedback comes in, it goes into our unsorted section. I will then obviously assess it, add a tag, add an idea if there's an idea that may be linked. And if there's something, excuse me, that I don't understand, for example, if it's something that is actually feedback about services or something that's not quite clear, I will actually contact probably Emma or Liz. Emma is your account manager, so I will just clarify things with Emma or Sam or whomever may have added and go, hey, I don't quite understand what this was about. Could you maybe clarify with the customer? Or if you understood and maybe the whole context isn't there, could you just help me, you know, understand it a little bit more? And that just, you know, allows me to be able to link it to the idea so that our CPO, Simon, is able to understand it as well. So while I manage the feedback backlog, I also help Simon, our CPO, manage the idea backlog. So I make sure that all feedback is linked in accordingly. I make sure that if something is kind of growing in trends, I kind of highlight it and go, hey, by the way, this is happening. Or if there's a particular project that he's considering, for example, you guys will be glad to know that thanks to your feedback, Simon has decided to rework the Slack bot entirely. And the first thing he did was tell me, hey, could you point me to where all this feedback is collected? Is it in one idea? Can we break it down in different ideas? Things like that. And he now has this mini project that he's working on with the Slack bot. So that's all because you guys send me feedback, and then I'm able to, you know, triage that for him directly.
Great. Thanks, Andrea, for setting that out.
Sure.
Apologies, I couldn't grab the link because you have my screen. So I'll try and grab it for you. I'll just open up a new tab and quickly move that.
For you, don't worry, I'll do it right now.
Oh, cool. Okay. So hopefully what we've been able to show you on this short webinar today is, obviously you've got some examples of how we manage feedback at ProdPad, which hopefully will be useful for you to then reflect on how you might want to implement a process. And we have shared with you some of our different ways that you can use ProdPad to gather the feedback and better manage that in an easy way, so that it doesn't become sort of unwieldy extra thing for you to do. If anyone does have any questions for us or examples they want to share, then you can share in the chat, and I can see that Andrew's just added the link to the blog post that she wrote on our Zendesk integration that we set up to. So yeah, feel free to add any questions or examples in the chat. And then we do also have one final poll for you as well, which will pop up shortly too, before you go anywhere. But let's see if you've got any questions first. I'll give you a few minutes.
So we do have a question. The first is, do you have plans to link feedback to a roadmap card? So the answer to that is no. But the reason for that is because feedback links to your ideas and your ideas link to your roadmap. There's absolutely no need to have feedback directly on a roadmap because you're not basing your roadmap on feedback. Feedback is something that relates to the problems that you're solving, so that you can get that qualitative understanding of what you're solving and why. But that's where the ideas come in. So instead of linking that feedback directly, you're going feedback to ideas, prioritize those ideas, triage those ideas, and then those ideas go directly into your roadmap cards.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, just obviously, I don't know how that user is using their roadmap, but just make sure that your roadmap cards are of the right granularity level as well. So those roadmap cards should really be a theme or initiative, which should be a headline of a problem or need to be solved. So they're more around the potential opportunities for improving problems for your product or a need around your product, and the cards should then represent how that meets your business objectives. The ideas should already have been validated along the feedback as to how they're going to meet your customer needs, as well as in the business case. So just double check how you're setting out your roadmap cards, just in case if you're thinking then it's at the feature level and that's why you want to add feedback, then you might have it slightly out of kilter. But again, reach out if you do want to clarify that with any of the team.
Cool, thank you. We have another question, which is, are we planning on making an easy to capture answer method? Okay, so you guys know we have the Dropbox for ideas. We do not have a Dropbox for feedback because it's a little bit trickier. Essentially, what we do right now with ideas is we look at the sender as the user and then the content as the content for the idea. It's a little bit harder to do that for feedback because we would end up attributing the sender as the contact. And if you're forwarding something, then it becomes a little bit harder. That being said, there are things you can do. I would highly recommend looking at Zapier, as they have it's like a formatter thing where you can actually tell it and attribute what you want to select from the email, particularly if you're forwarding something. So that's pretty smart. Other than that, Emma, if you want to show really quickly our Chrome extension, that's another way of very quickly dropping in feedback. Yeah. So Emma's going to show it.
Unfortunately, I can't because I'm on incognito.
Oh, you're incognito.
Mode, but I can show you in the help center where it is. So let me just find it, and then it's very easy to find in our help center, and you can easily then just grab it from the web store. And like you can see here, this example, it just basically sits on your browser, so that it's like it basically is the quick add, but it's in your browser, and you can just quickly hit that button and get going with that.
Yep, so it's super easy. Another question is, how does ProdPad work to associate user feedback to a specific product? You can actually associate feedback to a product. You absolutely can. So that would happen from within, if you click on the feedback, there we go. So you can actually link it directly to the product. And when you're in the feedback tab, you can filter by product. So then you would see everything in relation to that particular product. If you are using the portal, you can actually filter the portal by product. So anything that is submitted to that portal will then automatically be linked to that particular product. So what we're seeing right now on the screen is main product feedback portal is associated to the product apartment tracker. Admin portal is associated to the product admin portal. And French apparently is also associated to apartment tracker. So that just means that anyone that submits a piece of feedback through those specific portals will automatically have their feedback associated to the product within ProdPad. So you can just go in, add that filter, and you'll be able to see that directly. Mm-hmm. Cool, another question. I'm not sure I understand this, so I'm gonna see if you can answer it.
Cool.
Like I said, I've been sick for the past week, so I don't think that words make a lot of sense to me right now. How do you show that an idea has only been requested by one customer, but 100 times, versus an idea that has been requested once by 100 customers?
Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay,
I think
so
I get that.
yeah, so I think, and it will depend on how you want to add it internally. So obviously, if one person has given that feedback 100 times, you'll be able to tell from in the idea itself. Say if you did track every time they asked for it, like I think this is an example as well, like Joe has asked twice for an FAQ document. He really, really wants one. So has Gary, he's asked for twice. So basically, you can see by clicking into the customer feedback and then reviewing who's asked for it. You can also export and do a little search there, and also by contact. So you can filter down this feedback by contacts in this view as well. So you definitely can dive in and tell the difference between an idea that has 100 pieces of feedback from one person versus 100 separate customers.
And the neat thing is that even if you have one person sending you the same piece of feedback 100 times, if you filter by name, you would actually be able to archive 99 of those pieces of feedback and then leave one active.
Yeah.
So you have that option as well.
Yeah, and I would argue as like from an account management perspective, like it's fine from a product perspective that you might not necessarily care as much if one person is asked 100 times versus 100 people asking separately. But from an account management point of view, they're obviously really, really in need of that, or they want it. So you might want to go back to them and close that feedback loop in another way, either through customer success or account management, so that they don't feel like they keep asking but they're not getting anything back. So it still needs to go through that feedback management process, and that loop needs to be closed, but it might not necessarily be because you build it just because they asked 100 times, if that makes sense.
Cool. Our next question is, do we have any plans to link Hotjar with ProdPad? We don't at this time, but I'm happy to take that in as feedback. If you want to send us a direct message to the panelist with your details, then we can add it to our feedback backlog.
Yeah.
The next question is, do you have a recommended format for ideas/feedback/user stories that best relays what the overall need is? Well, we use gherkins.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
I mean, if I'm understanding this correctly,
Yeah.
if you want to clear that up, that'd be great. But what we do is, obviously, we review all of the feedback, and then we write our user stories on gherkin formats. If you know what gherkins are, but it's just a way of writing user stories. So it would be, as a user or as a type of user, I would like to X in order to Y. So it just kind of helps us narrow down not just what the user is trying to do, but what it would look like for different users, because as you guys know, we have 3 different types of roles. So a typical gherkin user story based on a piece of feedback would be, as an admin, I would like to do this in order to that. But as a reviewer, I would like to do this in order to that. So it just kind of helps us narrow down not just how it's being built, but also how it's being tested.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, like how that fits into then ideas and feedback, it's going to be very difficult for you to get feedback from a customer in that format. So it might just be that you need to just gather the information that you do have, whether it's you that's speaking to the customer or colleagues are, or if they've just sent it in, you know, try and dig in a little bit more. If you can't get down to the sort of problem that they're looking to solve, if it just sounds like a request, try and dig a little bit deeper, you know, do the whole 5 whys or digging into the problem, and document that in your feedback. And then the ideas will then be about potential solutions that could solve that problem. So you might have one piece of feedback that around say navigation or something, or they want to integrate with a specific tool, but that could actually be resolved by a couple of different ideas, like 4 different ideas that might all potentially solve that problem in different ways, because the problem that they have isn't necessarily about the integration. There could be other solutions to that. And then, as Andrea said, then your user stories are going to be the template of then sort of more getting more defined in that area. So that's, hopefully that helps to just understand the sort of different levels of information and how you're going to shape that up. There's not necessarily a template that will work across all 3.
Sorry, was that a question for me?
No, it was just that was it.
Okay.
Do you have any more questions?
We do. Once you've prioritized an idea, is there a project management tool that you suggest for keeping everything together? So we use Trello. And as I'm talking, I'm going to look up the blog post that our CEO, Jana, wrote actually for Trello around how to manage your projects with an integration through ProdPad. So I can pull that up for you.
While you do that, I'll just point out as well. So we do also have, if you're not using it, the ideas workflow area. So this section is really intended to represent the ideation process. So all of the different stages, not just the development process, but actually the validation of ideas. So how do you decide whether an idea is worthwhile pursuing or not? Represent those in this workflow. So here we've got an example of assessment and discovery, but you might also have things like design, priority scoring, and then before it moves into development. And so it's at that point that then ready for development, you would then send it to something like Trello, but we can handle managing it through the ideation phase.
That is correct. Does anyone have any other questions?
If not, then we have a final poll for you, if you would be so kind. This is the second success session we've done, and we're looking to do more, but we want to make sure that they suit your needs and help you to make the most use out of ProdPad. So if you could fill in the poll, that'd be fantastic. It'll help us give us feedback for moving forward and how we can improve, which is very apt for this. And also, if you do have any key takeaways of things you're going to try as a result of this session, if you could drop those in the chat for us, then it would be really interesting to see what you're going to do as a result.
Someone has a question about Jira. Not what this is about, but we can definitely help you out if you want to send us your question. As that question is coming in, I want to say almost without surprise, people want to know how to manage ideas. So I think that might be the next one.
That might be the next one. Fantastic.
Yes, Bart, this will be, the recording will be sent over the next few days. So no worries about that.
Is it possible?
Sorry, let me read that again. For the Hotjar question, it's a feedback request, so we'll definitely take that in as feedback.
So, Gustavo, with our Jira integration, we assume that you are not using it to collect feedback, but instead you would be creating your sort of epics and user stories as ideas and user stories in ProdPad, and then would send it to Jira when it's fully scoped. There might be a possibility using like the APIs or maybe Zapier to send feedback from Jira to ProdPad. Andrea, I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I have never heard of that, but I was going to suggest the same. If you're collecting feedback in Jira, then I don't know if you're talking about Service Desk perhaps, but you would essentially create a Zapier integration.
But again, if you do have any more questions, Gustavo, we can talk to you sort of off this webinar and help you look into that. It's no problem at all. Great.
I'm not seeing any other questions come in. So we may have to wrap this up.
Great.
Thank you guys. It's been quite a bit of a long session, but you guys stuck through it and asked a lot of really great questions. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for giving us your feedback. Definitely helps us understand how to cater these and adjust these for the future. So I think with that said, we're going to let you guys go.
Okay. Thank you all so much. Speak to you soon.